In this video, we are going to learn about the difference between the state and props in React. These are two of the most fundamental concepts, and understanding them clearly will help you build interactive and reusable components. Let's first understand what is state. State represents data managed inside a component. A component can update its state, and whenever it changes, React re-renders the component. State is mutable, it can be changed using setState in class components or hooks like useState in functional components. Think of a state as the memory of the component. Let's see an example. First, import React and use state hook from React. React is needed to build components with JSX, and use state lets us add the state to this functional component. Next, we define the export a default function called counter. This function is our component that will render the UI. Inside the component, we create a state variable by calling useState. We write const count set count equals useState with an initial value of 0. Here count stores the current value and set count is the function to update it. Now in return statement, we wrap everything inside a div. This is the container of our component. Inside the div, we add a paragraph tag that says count and then shows the value of the count. So when the state changes, this text will automatically update. Next, we add a button with the label increase. When the button is clicked, it calls setCount with count plus 1. This means every time we click the button, the count value increases by 1 and React automatically re-renders the paragraph with the updated number. And finally, we close the div and the function that completes our counter component. This is the initial output. When the app first runs, you will see a heading or container with text count is equal to 0. That's because the initial state value of the count is 0. If I click the increase button one time, the state updates to 1. And now the output changes to count is 1. Each time I click increase, the number keeps going up. Count 2, count 3, count 4, and so on. This happens because React re-renders the UI with the new state value every time. So the output shows us a live counter. It starts at 0 and each button click increases it by 1. This small example demonstrates how React uses state to manage dynamic data and how UI updates are automatically handled when state changes. Next, we will see what are props. Props are short for properties, are inputs to a component. They are passed from parent to child. Props are read-only. A child component cannot change the props it receives. Think of props as argument to a function. Let's see an example. First, import React from React. We always do this because JSX needs React to work. Next, we define a type greeting props. This type says that our component must receive a property called name and it must always be a string. Now we create a functional component called greeting. It receives props of type greeting props. Notice how we are using destructuring here. We take the name directly from props. Inside the return, we display the paragraph that says hello followed by the value of name. So if the name is Alice, this component will render hello Alice. Next, we create our main app component. Inside the return, we have a div that contains two greeting components. First greeting is the given prop name equal to Alice. Second greeting is the given prop name equal to Bob. This means the greeting component will render twice but with different values. When we run this in the browser, the output is hello Alice, hello Bob, one line for each greeting component. This shows how same component can be reused with different data. This simple example demonstrates how props work in React. Props are just like function arguments. They allow us to pass data into a component. Because of props, our greeting component is reusable and we can use it as many times as we want with a different names. Let's see some key differences between the state and props. Features, state, props were defined. State are defined inside the component. Props are passed from the parent to child. Next feature is mutable. Yes, state can change via set state. Props are read only. Who updates it? In state, the component itself updates it. In props, the parent component updates it. What is the purpose? State is used to manage internal data, while props are used to provide external configuration. What is analogy? In state, it's components memory, and in props, it's function arguments. Let's see an example for state and props together. First, import React and use state hook from React. React allows us to use JSX and use state. Let us add state to functional components. Next, we define a type called display props. It specifies that the display component will receive a prop name count and it must be a number. This ensures type safety when passing props to the child component. Here we define the display component. It receives the count prop and inside the return, it renders a paragraph showing current count followed by the value of count. This component is only responsible for displaying the count. It does not manage state itself. Now we define the main component called counter app. Inside it, we use the use state to create a state variable called count initialized to 0. Set count is the function we use to update the state. Inside the return, we have a div container. First, we render the display component passing the count as prop. This means the display component receives the current state and shows it. Next, we have a button labeled increase. When clicked, it calls the set count with count plus 1 updating the state. React automatically re-renders the display component with a new count. This is the output. On initial load, the output shows current count 0. If I click the increase button once, the count updates to 1. Clicking again increases it to 2, then 3 and so on. This demonstrates how state in parent component can be passed as a props to child component, allowing dynamic updates in the UI. This example combines both state and props. Counter app manages the state using the state. Display receives the count as the prop and shows it. Whenever state changes in the parent, the child automatically updates. This is a core concept in React for building dynamic reusable component. Let's say some best practices. Use state for data that changes within a component like user input, toggles, counters. Use props for data passed into a component from outside. Keep components reusable by relying on props instead of hard coding values. If multiple components need the same data, lift state up to their nearest common parent and pass it down as props. Let's summarize this video. State is internal, mutable, owned by the component. Props is external, immutable, passed by parent. Together, state and props define how components store and receive data. Mastering them is the foundation of React development. Next up, we will see handling multiple state variables.